Hi everybody, welcome back to the Amici's Kitchen. As you see, I've already started because I wanted to get my pasta cooking. Today we are going to be making a very simple and basic pasta dish with a little baby mini meatballs. So you're going to get your pasta, you're going to get your protein, and we're going to get some fresh vegetables in there. So I tried to pick a recipe that I thought would be good again for some things that you might already have around the house during this time. I hope everybody's doing well, and we're on week 4 here now. So maybe next week we might have some news about maybe opening a little bit. We're keeping our fingers crossed and hoping. But in the meantime, I've really enjoyed meeting with everybody. I've gotten great response. A lot of people have been writing to me, making the recipe, sending me pictures. So it's really made me feel pretty good during this time. So today we're gonna make a complete meal. We've done sauces, we've done meats, we've done desserts. So today we're actually gonna make a pasta dish that your kids are gonna love and also you're gonna love. So I went ahead already and I started boiling my pasta. In the first week I told you about a pasta stock pot with salted water like the sea. And so the pastas can swim. And today, if you can see this, I'm using little shells, baby shells. And this is why this recipe is really good for kids, because it's a small mini pasta with mini meatballs. Over here, I have another pasta called ditalini. So if you didn't have shells, you could use this. This is already cooked for our Italian wedding soup. And also we have another pasta that you could use, just a regular elbow. So a lot of people have these already in their cabinets at home. So you can, this is also a great one that you can use as well. So pretty much you might be saying, well, what is the name of this dish? You don't just want to say pasta with mini meatballs, but the word for improvise in Italian is called sciu. So this is that kind of a dish. It's a sciu because we're going to improvise. Because if you don't have chuck or beef, you could use chicken meat or you could use turkey, whatever you have in your refrigerator. I have fresh cherry tomatoes here, but if you don't have those, you could use a canned tomato or you could use a big beefsteak tomato and just cut them. If you don't have fresh mozzarella like I do, and I know I'm able to get access to all these things through the restaurant, these are actually called bocconcinis. They're just a small fresh mozzarella, but I know in the store you can actually buy something like this in the refrigerated section, and in the back, you know, they just have all the separate little cheese, fresh mozzarella like that. So you could use that. And in the worst case scenario, if you wanted to improvise again, you could use shredded mozzarella, which also comes in your refrigerated section. So we're gonna do this in a couple different steps today. We're gonna actually make the meatballs first. Before we get going, I just wanna check my pasta again, because you don't wanna do overcooked pasta, because once we take it out of here with my spider, we're going to put it back into a pan and cook it here with the meatballs. It's almost finished, so I'm just gonna keep my eye on that. And now we're gonna actually get started making the meatballs. So the recipe called for 1 pound of ground meat. And like I said, you could have turkey, you could have chicken. I have beef here, so I'm just gonna start with that. And then I need 1/4 cup of breadcrumbs. So we're gonna be using our dry measuring cups again. And I'm just gonna put in 1/4 cup. Remember when you're doing this to kind of level these off, because you don't wanna have them too dry. We're gonna add that in there. And then I have 1/4 cup of parsley. If you have fresh parsley, that's even better. But at this point, I have dried parsley that we use a lot in our recipes. So I'm going to add that in. I know a lot of you have already made meatballs. I mean, everybody has their own recipe. Their nana or their mom showed them already, and that's wonderful. And this is just another addition to a recipe. So as I also stated before, it's always best to open your eggs over a bowl so you don't get a shell in your mix. So I'm going to open them in here. Make sure I don't get a shell. I'm going to put that in there. And I'm going to do it again. We crack a lot of eggs in the restaurant. Sometimes some of our dishes call for like 18 eggs at a time. I'm also going to do a tablespoon of milk Now this is where you could add an addition if you wanted to. I know some people want to put ketchup in or tomato sauce, whatever. I'm just going to do the traditional milk. So that's my measuring spoon of 1 tablespoon right here. And these are my favorite measuring spoons. I'm actually going to tell a secret here. I actually got them from my FabFit Fun Box, which I treat myself to a couple times a year, and these were from the Giada collection, so I was very, very excited when I got them. They're my prized kitchen possession right now. And then, so we have these in there, and so now the next is cheese. So we need 3/4 of a cup of cheese. So the 1 cup is too big. We're gonna use the 1/2 and the 1/4 again, because that equals 3/4. So we're doing a little math as we go along. So I'm going to put my grated cheese in here. All right, there's 1. And then the 3/4, yeah, then little 1/4 makes 3/4. And then of course we always have to have salt and pepper. And I'm just gonna eyeball those. So this, I figure my 2 fingers is a teaspoon. I've done it enough in the restaurant where I know. And just I'm gonna put in a little bit of pepper. Kids may not like that. So I'm actually done here with my pasta. I'm gonna pull it off of the water because it's still a little al dente. And what that means is, remember I told you, it means the tea. So you still want it a little bit chewy because we're going to then cook it in this pot here, so it's gonna get extra cooked. All right, so basically you're gonna take a spoon, mix this up. And the secret with meatballs is you never want to overwork them because they can become tough after a while. So I'm going to mix them up here at first with this, but I'm actually going to end up using my hands because these are the best way to mix anything up. People think your hands are your jewels, but they're actually your tools. It's true. I can tell these are going to be very tasty because every time I mix it, I can see all of the spices and everything, the cheese working into it. And you just want to lightly mix it around. Like I said, you don't want to make it hard and keep going because it will make the meatball tough and overworked. A lot of people have a problem with their meatball falling apart. You may not have enough egg in them. A lot of people have too much breadcrumb and they're very doughy. So it should be light like this. This is pretty much worked through. A lot of recipes typically have garlic in them or onion in them, but this is a recipe specifically designed for kids, so we don't want to put too much stuff in there like that. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of get this off of my hands. I don't usually work with gloves at home. And I'm going to turn on our oven here. And remember, we have a gas stove at the restaurant, so it heats up very, very quickly. And I'm going to just cover the bottom of my pan with some olive oil. This olive oil is actually mixed with canola, so it's a combination because you don't really want to fry with olive oil because it smokes very easily and you don't want to burn it and then it gets bitter. So we're just going to have this pan heat up right now, and while it's heating up, we're going to start to roll. Now, everybody has rolled a meatball in their time. So, but the key is the consistency. We don't want a big meatball and we don't want a tiny meatball because then they won't cook evenly and you'll have something raw or something overcooked. So we're just gonna take a little bit, as much can fit in your fingers like this. If you have like a little tiny ice cream scooper and you wanna make sure they're all the same, you could do that. So we just basically put it in the palm of your hand and then you begin to roll. Very lightly, and that's it right there. We are just gonna roll. And Abby, if you could just get me a plate over there for just a moment.
I'm like super busy
I'm gonna keep rolling because I forgot what we need to put our meatballs on. Perfect. Okay, and while our oil is heating up, we're going to roll these all up. I probably should have had some rolled already, but with everything going on right now in the news, and with all these loans going on, you know, I've been a little bit busy trying to keep up with everything and trying to keep up with keeping the restaurant going. I'm gonna turn my oil down a little bit. I didn't have time this morning to roll these ahead of time, so I hope I don't take too much of your time here. But these are very simple. I mean, your kids are gonna love these, and actually adults love them. You can just pop one in your mouth. But when we're done with this dish, you are not gonna believe how good it is and how simple it is. So while we're rolling, if anybody has any questions for me, I would be happy to answer them. My daughter Abby, she is behind the scenes here, so she can let me know if you have any questions or you need to know anything. And like I said, just you can substitute. This is called shui. So if you don't have any of these ingredients, feel free to substitute something. A good substitution for breadcrumbs is sometimes you could put frosted flakes in a blender or a food processor and blend them up. Or old bread or old rolls or Ritz crackers or anything. Cooking really isn't that difficult, and it's not supposed to be. When that time happens, then you know you're not enjoying it anymore. And it's supposed to be an enjoyable thing. So we're getting enough here. I might not be able to roll all of these at the moment with you guys because like I said, I don't want to take up too much of your day. Although I could stay here and cook all day, which I will be. But it's a really simple process. I remember doing this with my Nana. She and I would do a lot of cooking together on Sundays. I enjoyed it. Me and my brothers and sisters would go over after church when I was young. Back then we wore slips under our dresses. So it was a hot day. We would take our dress off and run around in our little white slips. My Nana would be inside after we've had sandwiches, Italian cookies, and sandwiches filled with cold cuts and ham and everything. Then she would begin on dinner. Okay, so I have enough here just to get you started to show you how this goes. But you should continue honestly to cook the rest of these because this dish is going to be so good. You're going to want every single meatball. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to empty these away from myself into the pan. You don't want to overcrowd your pan. If you do that, then this oil will get cooler and stop cooking. See already how they're getting brown? And you want to do that, get them like brown on all sides. And these are tiny, so they're actually really going to cook fast. I know here in South Carolina the weather is so beautiful and we are all dying to get outside to the beaches and stuff and get back on our boats. I think that's the biggest thing people do here is go to the beach and boats. But this is also a really good recipe that if you make it and you have it left over, you can just put it in a Tupperware dish and bring it on your boat with you and eat it. You can bring it anywhere. It's very good for kids. It can be eaten at room temperature if you want it to.
Carmine says he loves watching you make meatballs.
He does, doesn't he? He probably knows how to roll a mean meatball himself. It smells so good already. It really does. I'm actually probably going to end up eating this when my video is over. I never eat lunch before I come, which is stupid. So I always get really, really hungry. While these are cooking, I told you my pasta was finished. My little tiny shells here, and I love them. I love the shells because they're going to actually keep some of the sauce in there. So I'm going to get this big bowl out ready while they're cooking. And I'm going to take out my pasta. And this again is a spider. So I'm just going to put these in a bowl. Let them drain out a little bit. And remember I told you the pasta water is actually magical. You should always save your pasta water when you're making dishes like this because sometimes you need to thin out your dish and you add a little bit of that starchy water and it adds nice flavor to the dish and it also makes it more easy to work with. So this is what I have in here now. I'm not going to put all of it in because I don't have all my meatballs cooked. So that would not be, it would be too much pasta for the meatballs. So these are cooking, and like I said, they're going to get done very, very fast. while this pasta is hot, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take just a quarter of a cup of Parmesan cheese. And you might say, well, why? I mean, nothing else is in here. The cheese will actually stick to the pasta and actually make it more flavorful. So I'm going to take a little bit of this grated Parmesan cheese that I have here, and I'm going to sprinkle it over my hot pasta. I'm going to toss it around. Actually, kids love this right here. It's so easy. Kids love Parmesan on their pasta. So I have my pasta flavored already while I'm waiting on my meatballs. And they're almost done cooking here. Because remember, these are tiny. So you don't want them to be tough and overcooked. And be careful when you're working with hot oil. It will splat up on you. I have a ton of burns on my arms, which I'm not proud of, but those are battle wounds.
Annie said she'd eat the pasta just like that.
Annie always ate the pasta like this. Annie ate the pasta before it was even cooked. She loves it.
She still does that.
She still does. Okay, so these meatballs have come a long way. See how nice and brown they are now? You can hear them frying up. While that's happening, I'm going to take my cherry tomatoes and I'm going to take a few of these and we're just going to cut them. Okay, we don't want to put them in this pan whole because they will not cook well. So we're going to cut them up here really quickly, and I'll just show you. If you don't have a cherry tomato, you could use tomatoes in a can. Sometimes they have whole peeled little tomatoes in a can. I'm just cutting them in half, and I'm actually going to add them to my meatball mixture. I'm going to start adding them in because we want these to cook down. And the recipe also calls for chicken broth. So I already had my chicken broth going, and it calls for a 1.5 cups of chicken broth. So I have my scooper here, and this scooper is 1/2 cup. I already know that for a fact. And I have my chicken broth, and it's hot. And I'm glad that it's hot because I don't want to add cold chicken broth to it because it will slow down this cooking process. Now we just want to flavor this. Okay, so on top of the flavoring that we already had for the meatballs, we're now adding a chicken broth flavoring. And so as this cooks, that flavor is also going to go into the meatballs along with the cherry tomatoes. I'm going to add a couple more tomatoes in here. This is a very, very impromptu type of cooking. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to it. You just have to make sure you make the thing on the recipe that takes the longest, which is the meatballs. So you want to get those started. You want to always get your pasta done first because you don't want everything to be done and then you're waiting on the pasta to be finished. So I'm just cutting these cherry tomatoes in half. If you have a big beefsteak tomato, just chop it up small. That's fine also. Alrighty, these are all done. So I'm just going to put them in my pan also, and these are going to cook. And all you want to do basically is get your cherry tomatoes to break down and become soft because nobody wants to bite into a hard tomato. So your meatballs are definitely done by now. So you have this great broth. And where do you think all this is going to go? It's going to go into this pasta that's already been seasoned with the Parmesan cheese. And you know now, as far as chicken broth goes, they have really good stuff out there. They have chicken bone broth, which is very, very healthy for you. They have concentrated chicken broths, which are the second best thing, but the best is just to take a piece of chicken and boil it down in some water with some spices. See how this is all coming together so nicely now? And our tomatoes are cooking down. I feel them getting nice and soft. And you'll see them start to get wrinkly when they're done. And then I can press on it and it just smushes so easy. Because these are almost done. You don't want them hard because it's a texture thing and your children might go, ooh, I don't like tomato. But see how my spatula is just going right through them because these are done. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this mixture and I'm going to put it into the bowl. You might say, well, how come we're not going to put the pasta in here? Because the pasta's done and we're not going to overcook it. So we're basically just going to take this mixture here of meatballs and tomatoes. We're going to put them in here. If you have a big slotted spoon, you could do that. And okay, so I have that right now. We're going to mix it up. So it should look like this at this point. Okay, so while everything is hot, guess what we're going to do? We're going to take our fresh mozzarella, the little bocconcinis, and we're going to put them in here, just like that. We're going to take the rest of our parsley that we had left over and put it in. Now, also the recipe called for fresh basil. Now, basil is in every Italian house. It is the best herb, and the smell is just amazing. So I have some here. Of course, this is very, very big leaves. You should always grow basil in your garden. It's just one of these that you can eat it raw, you can eat it cooked. It's so good. So I'm just going to take a knife, roll it up, and I'm just going to cut my basil into little strips like this. You should never cut on a plate. I don't have a cutting board. I do, but I don't, and I'm terrible for that. So I have what's called chiffonade, because they look like little ribbons, and I'm going to put them right in there. And I can do a couple more. If you don't have fresh basil, what are we going to do? We're going to improvise, and we're going to use a dried basil.
Oh God, that sound.
I know, I'm horrible. You should never cut on a plate. And we're just going to put them in here. So now with the heat of everything, it's going to actually wilt the basil. You got your meatballs going. You've got your tomatoes all cooked through. And now you can just take a little bit of the chicken stock that you had if you want. If yours is too dry, and you could put that in there, just like that. Because all this has the bits of meatballs on it that are still in the bottom and all of the flavorings. So we're just going to add that in there. And now we were also supposed to add another cup of Parmesan cheese, or half a cup, because the half cup we put on there when they were not coated. Now we put that in the other half, and we're going to mix this up. How good does this look?
Lisa Campbell Tracy said your food always looks so good.
Aw, hi Lisa. We miss your brother. Troy always brings us amazing wine here. But I hope he's safe on the road. Troy is a truck driver, so he's working very hard right now. You know what, guys? Our dish is done.
Yes.
And what we're going to do now is we're going to put some in a bowl, because you know I gotta taste it. I'm just gonna use my spider. All right, so look at this. We've got our pasta. We've got our mini meatballs. We've got our tomatoes. We've got our cheese and all of our amazing spices. So I'm just gonna try to get everything on 1 teaspoon here. I'm gonna take a meatball, a tomato, and a cheese. It's so good. And I'm not just saying that because I made it, but what could be bad about it? You have pasta, you have meatballs, you have fresh mozzarella, which is melting. You have tomatoes, basil, and cheese. So this is definitely a little meal that you can make with your kids. They will love it. They will love it hot. They will love it cold. And they will love it if you take them out on a picnic and heat it up for them. but all of this stuff was something that you could find in your pantry. And like I said, you could have improvised. I hope you enjoyed as much as I am. This is going to be my lunch today. And again, I thank you for joining me and Abby. We look forward to doing this on Fridays for you guys. And have a wonderful weekend. Stay well and eat well.